Awesome. So today we have Daniel from Clovis Hills Community Church, and Daniel is the production director at Clovis Hills. So there's a lot in Daniel's wheelhouse, and gonna hand the mic over to him. So Daniel, super excited to have you on here today. Could you tell me a bit about everything you do at Clovis Hills and what called you to ministry and how you found your current role?
Yeah, I mean that's a lot in one question, but and
Very.
I've been at Clovis Hills. I've been at my church for about 17 years. I grew up in this church, and my current role involves overseeing the back end and production side of our weekend experiences, both from a Sunday morning, just our main adult gatherings, our youth gatherings, our children's ministry gatherings. Anything involved in IT, live streaming, video infrastructure, kind of the back end side of things. So I stumbled into this role about a year ago here, after being involved in our church off and on. Really picked a lot up during COVID, and I felt the Lord in this last year and a half really called me to pursue ministry full time again, and I have a heart for it, and I have a heart for helping our teams just have the smoothest Sunday possible, get rid of any distractions from presenting the gospel. So
Absolutely. Well, that is the name of the game. It's important to be kind of the force behind the scenes. They're just helping, because without the technology in place, like the teaching that's so important to happen every weekend, can't work. It can get slowed down. There can be errors, and it is, production is really it's almost like Batman. Like you are
absolutely.
the force in the shadows, making saving the day, the hero the church deserves. So awesome. Love that, and love that you mentioned you grew up at Clovis Hills Community Church before working there. That's something, you found a good role in ministry if you'd go to the church you're working at if you didn't work there. So that is outstanding to see that, Daniel. So very exciting. And your role as a production director, it's important to outfit the kids' rooms and run them in the easiest way possible tech wise. So with recently updating a lot of tech at your church, could you kind of outline your steps for researching and planning just a classroom overhaul, and then how you shifted from what you were doing to Playlister?
Yeah. So when COVID hit and our classrooms were shut down, I just took a walkthrough one day, and it was a little overwhelming. We had there was a lot of stuff that had been pieced together over the years in the past, where I can walk into one classroom and it's a couple of TVs and a computer in the back and a soundboard. Walk into another classroom, it's different TVs, different soundboard, powered speakers, unpowered, a different computer, no computer. Some rooms, they got a DVD player and they're plugging a thumb drive in. You got cables everywhere. And we really said, well, we want to take our classrooms and be ready for when we open to have the easiest experience possible. And we went through a lot of steps. We gutted our classrooms out and did a lot of aesthetic changes. But when it came for new technology, the piece I was missing was presentation. I didn't want to put computers in every classroom because I don't need a computer in a 2-year-old's classroom. And so we came across Playlister honestly through a recommendation from Orange in an email, because we use Orange curriculum here every week. And so I spent a little bit of time looking into it, and it felt like it was going to fit our needs the best, and we outfitted our classrooms for a seamless volunteer experience, because a lot of our classrooms on Sunday mornings are being run solely by volunteers. And so we our 2 secret weapons for our classroom were the QSys platform by QSC for automating everything in our rooms, from our speakers to our lighting to operating our TVs, and then Playlister. And right now we have 13 instances of Playlister deployed across 2 campuses, and it's been wonderful.
Absolutely. Well, we are more than happy to help, and that is outstanding to hear. Serendipitously was the thing you were looking for. But more importantly, love how you began taking that kind of walk through all your spaces and saying, hey, we got a bunch of different stuff here. And I love the objective of we want to have a volunteer centered environment that can be run and operated by volunteers. What are some kind of like checklist items for setting up an environment that can be completely operated by volunteers?
So my biggest thing is as little steps as possible. And I want to
Mm,
be able to explain a classroom to somebody in under 3 minutes. That's
okay.
really always been my target. I want to be able to walk into a room with somebody who doesn't really have a bunch of technical knowledge and very quickly explain to them, here's how this goes. And what's nice about that, with Playlister, what's been great has been, our children's ministry staff during the week can load all their curriculum up, have the classroom set the way they want to. With the fact that we have multiple campuses now, which is in the last 2 years, we've really started this multi-site model for our church, and
Mhm.
it's allowed us to have some uniformity between campuses and how we operate and how we do things. So it's easy to train out. And then I you know my like I said, my goal of walking into a classroom with a volunteer and being able to explain it and have them explain it back to me in under 3 minutes. Our current setup with Playlister is, you walk into a classroom, turn the TV on, turn the Apple TV on, turn the speakers on, and that's it. And it's not much more complicated than that.
Awesome. Well, that is outstanding to hear, Daniel, and really like that. Like, hey, can I explain it to you in under 3 minutes, and can you explain it back? Super important there. I know you mentioned QSIS was also super helpful. What other technologies have you invested in that just make the classroom easier for your volunteers?
Well, we spent, like I said, a lot of my time is spent on infrastructure. So
Mhm.
we during our off season of COVID, we did a significant amount of network overhaul,
Mm.
upgrading our internet speed across campus. We did new televisions, not just because we wanted them to look new, but um, it's nice to have. I have one. I have the same remotes in every class. There's no steps that have to change. So
Okay.
it's the same model in every. Yeah, it's the same model in every room even. So if I have
Mm.
something break down, I'm not hunting down or tracking down different operation guides or different part numbers. It's all pretty similar. And what's cool is I it's when we want to add, like when we add a campus in and we want to, as we've been taking on a lot of these smaller churches that are looking to overhaul their classrooms or even doing consulting for other churches. Um,
Mm.
I have a pretty standardized list now of what makes a classroom. It's a television, it's an Apple TV, it's a playlist or subscription, it's some ceiling speakers, and it's a cues to score for your campus. And it's pretty easy. You walk into a classroom and there's an iPad mounted to the wall that not only shows you like the simple things like volume, power, all that, but also has quick little how to's written up on it. So if you get stuck, it's very easy to basically help yourself and figure it out before it comes back to me and my team, and we have to go out and take care of it for you.
Absolutely. I
So
mean, I love that. Love that checklist and those details. Like, you don't really think, hey, it's not, you might be thinking it's not important for all our TVs to be the same, but for the volunteer, if they're in a different room and the like volume button's in a totally different spot of the TV, that's going to take some looking around for you.
yeah,
If it's broken or it needs something changed in the settings, you got to
yeah.
figure
Well,
out how to do that.
you got to think that like our camp. It's kind of wild. Our campus, as we've been growing as a church and almost outgrowing some of the buildings we have right now. We have a lot of rooms at our campus that are currently being used 7 days a week for different
Wow.
ministries, different Bible studies, different classes. And then we had this unique thing happen because of COVID, where we actually had three different churches meeting on our property right now.
Oh,
Because
wow.
we had a lot of churches that we were partnered with, who, because of COVID, they were meeting in schools. They were meeting in elementary school and high schools, and our school district shut all that down. And so we had a lot of churches said, hey, we need to host a class during the week, or we need to come record a service during the week, or we need to anything like that. We just need space. And so I wanted classrooms that would be easy to use, that don't really require much explanation. And the coolest thing, one of the things that we've done is, because every classroom is laid out the same, and they're all controlled by QSYS on the back end, we have it basically set to where every classroom resets every night at midnight. So everybody is walking into the same experience, because one of the troubles we'd have before when we were running a mixture of systems is, well, somebody didn't boot the computer down right, and they destroyed our ProPresenter library in the classroom, or somebody wanted to add a microphone to the soundboard, so they unplugged this and they changed the gain on this, and they did what they could to rig it and make it work. And now the next person in is having to guess what was undone before they come in and run a service. So there is very little that somebody interacts with in a classroom other than the iPad on the wall and an Apple TV remote. So there's less points of failure in the classroom. Everything else is sitting in a server room. And so that was really nice for us too. It's definitely helped troubleshooting out a lot, and you get the same experience whatever room you walk in, whenever you walk in.
Absolutely, that is outstanding to hear, and definitely the QSYS and the iPad makes it a lot more failure-proof than having the soundboard with all the different knobs that can do so many different things, especially if you don't tell someone what you adjusted. Absolutely, that definitely probably makes you sleep better on Saturday night, knowing less fires are going to be happening in the actual classroom spaces. What are some other things you've done with your tech overhauls to kind of minimize firefighting on the weekends?
Well, one of the nice things, I mean, with Playlister, we kind of have a checklist that our groups run through every morning before people come on campus of these are the things that we want to double check before we walk in. So it's logging into Playlister and making sure people actually built their playlists for the week. And the simple things like, hey, did you tag your playlist to the right room so that it shows up on the right screen? I'm very obsessive with tags and things like that. It's actually probably one of my favorite things about Playlister is I don't want somebody to walk into a classroom and have to look through 20 different playlists they're finding that morning. So I get pretty obsessive with tags to where you walk into the room and you got one playlist to choose from. It's either Sunday or Wednesday. What day of the week is it? That's the playlist you use. But we go through and check that. We just power things on in the morning. The cool thing about QSYS is I'm a big fan of monitoring stuff. So I have on my interface on my phone, I can check the status of every classroom. I check the power status of every TV. I check the network status of every audio encoder. Because what's really cool is we wanted to eliminate some of the cabling headaches of, well, if you're running something through an Apple TV and through a television in the classroom, well, how the heck are you going to get audio out without? That's the thing a lot of people run into is how are you getting audio out of the Apple TV into something other than just the television? So we actually have a box behind each television that's taken the optical audio out of TV and putting it on our Dante network. So I can assign things directly to the speakers in the classroom. I go in the morning and just check that all my audio routes are working, verify sound, go into our children's check-in and try to print something from each iPad. We do a lot of one of the cool pieces, all of our Apple TVs and all of our iPads, we use mobile device management on through So we've all of our stuff when we purchase it, whether through Apple or through a third party we work with, all gets into Apple Business Manager. We use a device management platform called Mosel. Yeah, the nice thing about Mosel, we were using another platform before, but what's cool about Mosel is you have unlimited Apple TVs. They don't count towards your licenses. So every one of our Apple TVs in a classroom is locked down to about 3 or 4 apps. It's basically you can pull up Spotify if you need to. You can pull up Playlister. You can pull up YouTube, and that's about it. You can't download the app store. You can't get in, and you can do AirPlay for when we need to. So they walk into the classroom with the iPad, and they're not looking for the control app. The iPads are locked down to a single app. That kind of stuff's been great, especially for that remote troubleshooting. If somebody tells me they have a problem in a classroom, I just pull up my laptop and I ask them what room they're in, and I can see at a glance, well, their iPad hasn't responded in a few hours. Let's reboot that, or let's figure out the network problem, or their Apple TV isn't connected to the internet, so that's why Playlister is not loaded. So I can go through and proactively see all that stuff and get alerts on it before it comes to me. And on the audio side with QSys, of when I have a connection with a fault, I have an emailer sent out, so it automatically emails me when I've got problems in the classroom.
Absolutely. I mean, thank you so much for that info, Daniel. I'm a fan of Mosel myself. That's my favorite MDM tool as well. So absolutely awesome to hear. And stuff like MDM, it can really be IT person's best friend, especially when you have lots of Apple TVs, MacBooks, iPads, you name it. It just makes it a lot easier there. So because there's the Apple server MDM, which is, while it's free, it's not super functional compared to Mosel, not as easy to use. What are some tips you'd have for churches looking into investing in MDM?
I think the biggest thing, I've used a few of them now. The reason we settled on Mosel, one was price. I was into Jamf for about a year or so, and by the time I added everything I wanted to it, I was paying close to $10,000 a year, and for the size of our organization, and it was getting kind of ridiculous. So we're paying significantly less for that with Mosel, but we have, we've got threat management for our laptops, so we got the antivirus side. We're using Mosel Fuse, so all of our logins are managed. So I can hand somebody an iPad or an iPhone or a MacBook and say, hey, just log in with your Google account and you're set, you're done. So my biggest thing with people with MDMs, I always recommend obviously spend your time testing, but B, it's really important to take your time before getting into something like that. Take your time to really think through what you're hoping to accomplish and doing your build outs and your policies. It was much easier to put everything together for whatever case you're looking at, test it on a couple devices, and then send it out. And that's worked for us. And like I said, we had a unique challenge this year in that we opened another campus that's about 250 miles away from us.
Oh, wow.
We partnered with a church. Yeah, we're in Fresno, California, Central Valley. We partnered with a church in the Northern Bay Area up in Marin County, California. That we basically are, our whole philosophy is partner with these older churches that haven't been growing in a while and would like to still have a gospel presence in their neighborhood. So we partner with this church in the Bay Area, and if I have a troubleshooting issue that I can't fix remotely, it's a 3.5 hour drive for me. So I have a bigger incentive to say, I'm going to try to do as much remotely as I can and have as much control as I can to get rid of that bottleneck. And having the MDM, having QSys, having Playlister, all those things together is kind of the little golden triangle there of making sure that our campuses are as self-sufficient and taken care of as possible.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, definitely don't want to drive 250 miles to do something that can be done with a few quick clicks in Mosel. That is, well, great to hear that it's saving you lots of time there. And love, those things to consider, because obviously price is a big one, but also the functionality and just testing it out. That is super, super insightful, Daniel. What other kind of tech tips would you say are really important things to keep in mind, whether you are a church overhauling technology, maybe a new church plant, you just got a building you want to get set up? What are some other important things to consider when outfitting classrooms?
So I would say the biggest for me from a production side is it mattered to have a good relationship with our children's pastor. I
Mm.
can build as many cool things as I want, but if it doesn't fit what the children's pastor's looking for in their classrooms, it doesn't matter. So it's
Mm.
really important to have that relationship established, and you know, techs in general, like production and IT people, sometimes can get that bad rap of, well, they're just the nerds in the other building, and they're very picky and they're very selective. But
Mhm.
ultimately, ultimately you can build the best system you can, but if nobody wants to use it or nobody understands it, you've wasted time and you've wasted money. So I would say the biggest thing, yeah, develop that relationship with your kid's pastor, find out their vision for the ministry, sit in a couple kids services. It
Mm.
matters. Uh, Talk to volunteers. Talk about if you got a current system that you're trying to overhaul, talk to volunteers about what they like about their current system and what their challenges are, because they're the ones operating it, not you. Um, so that's big. And if you're starting from scratch, like obviously my biggest recommendation to anybody building something from scratch is run more network cables than you think you need to. That's
Uh-huh.
everybody forgets that. But aside from that, the more you push toward uniformity, the better. Um, it just saves you so much headache, And I have our main campus here. We've got 9 children's classrooms, and every single one of them functions the same, and it makes a big
Mhm.
difference. So those would be my big recommendations.
Absolutely. I mean, could not agree more there. So, thank you so much for sharing that, Daniel. Thank you for the tips as we have been on here today. I know it's going to help our partners out a lot, and really like that idea of being on the same page with your Kidsmen team, sitting in on the service, talking to volunteers, because if you aren't aligned with Kidsmen, like you said, it's going to cause one, they're going to spend a lot of time on inefficiency that's not getting improved. And two, you might spend a lot of money on stuff you want on the IT side that doesn't get used in the kids' space. So super important. And thank you so much for sharing that, Daniel. Really enjoyed chatting, and I look forward to sharing the advice with our partners.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.